I'm Leslie Reynolds, and I am here to tell you a personal story about myself, and I call this story an unexpected greeting. 7 years ago, I was a first year teacher and I was teaching third grade. And so the students in my class were around 8, 9 years old. So they were youngsters. And I had received an email one morning, early in the morning, and it was from our school counselor. And she had stated that I had a student in my class, a little girl, who was going to be receiving a visitor that day. And that visitor was her father. And what was special about that is that her father had not been home for a year. He had been deployed in the army all the way to Afghanistan for a year. She had not seen him in that long, and so you know that she probably really missed him. Well, the email stated from my counselor that I should keep quiet about it and not tell any of the other students. That way it doesn't get away to them, and so that it could be a complete surprise to little Alexis. Now, I had to go all morning until the afternoon when he arrived without saying a word, and I had just a whole flood of emotions going on. I was nervous, I was emotional, had butterflies in my stomach. It was hard to contain my excitement and my emotions. Well, the afternoon finally came around and there was a knock at the door, and another student went and answered the door, and then a whole entourage of people walked through the door. We had the principal and the assistant principal came in the door, and our counselor was there, and then of course Alexis's father was there. And when he walked in the room, all eyes were on that door, and it was so interesting to see Alexis's face and her emotions as her father walked in the door. At first, I don't think that Alexis realized what was going on. She almost did a double take, and when she finally realized that it was her dad, she just stood there in awe for just a few seconds until she decided that this is my father, and then she ran to him and he scooped her up in her arms and he just held her so tightly, and she dug her head in his shoulder, and just tears were streaming down her face and his face, and everyone was all smiles. The kids had no idea in the class what was going on, and I guess they didn't realize that he had been gone so long, and so later I had to explain that to the class. But I was so thankful to have a camera on hand that day to capture that moment, because later that picture was put into our local newspaper as just a really interesting and fun experience for a student at our school. Um, One funny thing that happened at the end, after everything had calmed down and everyone had left, and things were finally getting back to normal, I have my class clown. I will never forget what he said. This was Rusty, and he said, "Well, I guess the war's over then." So it's just so funny to see the thoughts and minds of 8 and 9 year olds, and how when they see people coming home from places like that and trying to understand what's really going on. And I can only imagine what was going through Alexis's mind that afternoon. And so I've just I learned a whole lot through that experience. I always have had a special place in my heart with that particular class. It was my first year students, and I was lucky enough to have Alexis in my class and all of my students actually in that class the next year, because I looped up to fourth grade. So I just learned from that to just remember where my students come from, and that they need somebody to be more than just a teacher for them at school. They need somebody constant in their life, knowing that I'm there for them and that I care for them. And so that's the story of Alexis and her unexpected greeting from her father.